Welcome to the Carrère and Hastings Architecture Firm presentation by Callie Smith and Brett Bormann. So here we're going to go over a few things, including their place of birth and its influence, their education and training, apprenticeship and early work, as well as their mature work, importance and character of their library designs, as well as the overall contribution to the history of architecture. So Jean Mervin Carrère. He was born in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, on November 9th, 1858, not France, and he was born to wealthy coffee traders. He was educated in Switzerland until 1880 and worked as a draftsman for the architectural firm of McKim, Mead and White. So we have Thomas S. Hastings. He was born in New York City on March 11th, 1860, to Presbyterian ministers, and he was educated in private schools in New York, and he had an apprenticeship at Herder and Brothers, the premier New York furnishers and decorators at the time. And he also worked for a few years for McKim, Mead and White. Both of them also attended the École des Beaux-Arts as well. So their works. For Carrère, he was independently designed several circular panorama buildings in New York and Chicago, and he was most active in the firm's large civic and commercial projects, so like the Manhattan Bridge and the offices on Capitol Hill as well. Hastings was first commissioned to do a library extension to the Flagler's Memoreck estate, and then for the Ponce de Leon and later Alcazar hotels in St. Augustine, Florida. They both worked for a few years in the offices of McKim, Mead and White until their professional association began in 1885. Their architecture partnership operated from 1885 until 1911, when their partnership was over, when Carrère was unexpectedly killed in an automobile accident when he was hit by a taxi. Thomas Hastings continued on his own, and he used the same firm name until his death in 1929. They were located in New York City, and they were part of introducing the Beaux-Arts Style in the 1890s, which is inspired by their French schooling. And they're most known for their design of the New York Public Library. And their body of work is more than 300 projects over a wide spectrum. So they designed many well-known landmarks such as these, and they helped design 14 of the Carnegie Finance branch libraries. Some libraries that they designed include the Totenville Library, Tremont Library, Riverside Library, Port Richmond Branch Library, Muhlenberg Library, the Hudson Park Library, Stapleton Library, and the 58th Street Library, which was demolished and replaced by office buildings because America, let's destroy history. That's cool. The Epiphany Branch Library, as well as St. George Library, Hamilton Fish Library, the New York Public Library, which we're going to discuss a little bit more later on just in a bit, the Melrose Library, Washington Heights Library, and finally the Hunts Point Library. Their design and innovation, so it was focused on the Beaux-Arts style. What is that? So it originated from the École des Beaux-Arts, the School of Fine Arts in France, and it's kind of synonymous with America's Renaissance movement when it came around here. So they're massive and heavy, they're iron-based structures, and the construction itself lends really well to building public buildings like train stations, schools, and government buildings, such as like Grand Central Station is also part of this Beaux-Arts style, and typically features adornment reminiscent of Greek and Roman architecture. And their typical interiors have grand stairways, polished marble floors, arched doorways leading to large rooms, and vaulted and domed ceilings. Some French examples include the Palais Garnier, which is the French opera house, most famous for being depicted and part of the Phantom of the Opera, and Le Petit Palais. So the impact Carrère and Hastings had on architecture is they created buildings that have lasted decades, and they were also inspired by the City Beautiful movement's philosophy of flexibility, in which combined with their training and education, as well as this kind of flexibility, they were able to adapt to a wide range of designs. So they were able to build across whole spectrum, including grand hotels, theaters, civic buildings, parks and monuments, libraries, elegant townhouses, churches, exhibition pavilions, and bridges. And they were part of bringing the Beaux-Arts style to the United States. But what they did was they took that Beaux-Arts style and incorporated scientific innovation that was happening at the time, such as electricity, central vacuum systems, and using steel, which is stronger, based off of iron, and concrete. These kind of adaptation, the combining of these two things, influenced architecture because the combination was seen in other buildings at the time. The Lyric and New Amsterdam theaters mirrored these architectural designs in their construction. And they also worked closely with artists and sculptors on their buildings. So the New York Public Library, their most well-known and recognized work. So the design was originally a competition on who got to do this. There were 88 proposals at first, and then that was narrowed down to 6, including their previous employer, McKim, Mead, and White, who were part of designing the Boston Public Library. And they beat them. Their design won, and so it's fascinating that the apprentices surpassed the masters. The design and construction took almost 12 years because they had to do a lot of work to bake groundwork. They had to dig underground for the reservoir before they could start building the structure. And the design of this library carried over into other libraries throughout the country because the design was to be very open and inviting. The facade has high, tall archways and these staircases flanked by the lions inviting you into this space. So this invitation is what has been open to other libraries over the time. This invitation is at the heart of the importance that they had to libraries with the New York Public Library, because this was a space that allowed people from all statuses, all walks of life to come in. It wasn't just for the wealthy, which seems like common sense now, like that's what libraries are for. But at this time, that is a revolutionary idea because public libraries weren't a thing yet. Their design is ornate and detailed and gorgeous, but it's still centered around the distribution of books. So you have this gorgeous space, but on that first book that was checked out, the order was placed at 9:07 a.m. and was retrieved 7 minutes later, which this is before technology. Every advancement that we now have, the construction was so well done that they were able to move that fast. To further emphasize that this is a space for all, in the New York Public Library's trustees room, you have this gorgeous, ornate white marble fireplace that's flanked by depictions of the goddess Minerva. And the text in this fireplace says, "The city of New York has erected this building for the free use of all the people." So that is the important mark that they have left on libraries that still impacts us today. So some fun facts. The accident that killed Carrère occurred 2 months before the opening of the library. So there wasn't a grand opening ceremony for this space. Instead, it was just opened and thousands of people entered. But they did open for 1 day in March before the opening, so Carrère's coffin could be placed in what is now Astor Hall. So since he couldn't be there for the opening and be in this space that he designed, he was able to have a moment in death in this space. And also, Carrère and Hastings, they have busts located on the grand staircase that you're going to see every time you walk up and you walk down. You can say hi to Carrère and Hastings, which is fascinating because it shows the acknowledgement and commemorates their contribution to the work. You don't really see a lot of this type of respect for the architects at the time, and even now. You may know them, but you don't have busts of these individuals in the space that they designed. So thank you. This has been a brief presentation, a brief overview of the works of Carrère and Hastings architecture firm. Thank you so much. Some of the resources and our references are as follows. Have a wonderful day.